What I'd like to do now is to take a look at what's called AAF export. AAF export is a way of getting an edit out of Edius and into another program. Edius has got two options for exporting the project, AAF and EDL. EDL is a very simple way of getting an edit from one to the other. It's just basically a cut list of the clips. It has hardly any other information and it's a very blunt instrument. It's not a very nice way of doing it. AAF is better. So if I've got an edit like I have down here where I've got several cuts and a mixture of media and maybe a title and a few other bits and pieces, AAF will do a better job of getting that edit into another program than an EDL will. An EDL will just about manage to get a list of these cuts here, probably won't link back to the original media, you'll have to remake it from scratch, blah blah blah. AAF is better. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's better than using an EDL. The other option, which is fairly common these days, is called an XML export. Edius doesn't do that. Edius can import XMLs, but it can't export them. Maybe they'll add it in a future version. Right now I want to look at AAF. So what are they? Well, like I said, it's a way of getting a project out of Edius and into another program. So in this case, I'm either going to get it out of Edius and go into Avid, or Edius to Premiere, or Vegas, or another one I do use quite a lot is DaVinci Resolve. So I've got my edit on the timeline. I'm going to come to File, Export, and AAF. And what you do is obviously you decide where you're going to stick it. So you give it a name, and then you have to come in and fiddle with these settings. What the settings should be really does depend on which program you're going to. So, for example, I want to go off to DaVinci Resolve. And I found the best settings are really to come in here, untick Legacy, tick Separate Audio and Video, and that sets some of these settings down here. For other programs, you might want to have Legacy ticked. You might not want to separate the audio and the video. For example, if I take the standard Grass Valley preset for Avid, this is what it looks like. It's got a specific Avid MXF format, which is through the plugin you have to pay for, and its Legacy is not ticked and separated video and audio is not ticked. I want to go off to Resolve, so basically I'm going to come into here, tick Separate Audio and Video, untick Legacy, and then come down and set some of these settings. And what these settings do is decide whether you're going to use the original clips or whether you're going to remake them into something else. And for Resolve, 99% of the time, you basically have to remake it into something else. Resolve understands lots of different types of clips, but there's also a huge amount of clips that it doesn't understand. So it doesn't really do AVI files at all. It does quite a lot of QuickTime files, but there's quite a lot of QuickTime files it won't do. It doesn't do most standard def files. It doesn't do DV files. So most of the time you're going to have to convert your footage into something to get it into Resolve. Now, most of the time I convert it to a QuickTime file because it likes QuickTime files. And in particular it will like Grass Valley HQ files, or it will like Avid DNX HD files. Now with Resolve 11 it supported Grass Valley HQ. I've got Edius. I'm going to use that. It's the best format to use. So I've got to set the right settings here. And this is what do you do with a picture, what do you do with a sound? Well, if you tick Use Original Clips, it's going to link to the original files. And since my timeline is a mixture of stuff here, that's not going to work in Resolve. It won't link to most of those files. So I've got to copy the clips. I've either got to copy it or compress and copy. The difference between these two is if you choose Copy, it'll make up a new file for every single clip you have on the timeline. So it'll be remaking it, but it'll be remaking every single clip. If you choose Compress and Copy, it takes the whole timeline and converts it into one lump. So all this will be stitched up into one file. You can't chop it up so easily. Especially if I'm going after the grading program, I want each clip as an individual clip. That way I'm ready to grade each clip individually. So I always use copy clips. I hardly ever use compress and copy. On the sound, it's exactly the same thing. Do you want to copy the sound or do you want to link to the original? Now, if the original stuff is WAV files, fine. If it's a sound file embedded in a DV file, like it is for one of my clips, that's not fine. So again, I choose to copy that. I choose to make a copy of the sound. Otherwise, Resolve probably won't load it up. Having chosen to copy the clips, I come down to the copy option. And what I've got to do here is choose these settings at the top and choose what I'm going to make it up into, which are these settings down here. Do I use copy used clips or export the area used in the file? The difference is, if I choose export area used, it will just export the bit on the timeline. If I say copy used clips, it will use the entire clip. So this shot at the start here, that might come from a half-an-hour clip, even though I'm only using about 2 seconds of it. If I choose copy, it'll make up the whole half an hour. Now that might be nice if what you want to do is take all the footage in there so you can do a lot of editing afterwards. Most of the time I just want to trim it down to the stuff that I'm actually using on the timeline. The margin here, which generally starts off at 0, the margin says, okay, that's the bit you're using, do you want a bit of extra handles either side? At 0, what gets exported is exactly that. If you move it up, like put a second on it, there'll be an extra second of footage each side, so you can possibly tweak it a little bit when you get into whatever the other program is. So I do that, and I generally put a little bit of a handle on it. When you're going to make this stuff, it says, do you want to put the video clips in a separate folder, or do you want to leave it in the same folder as the AAF? I like to shove it in a separate folder just to keep it tidy. And then the most important thing, what do you want to make it up into? Now sound is very easy, practically everything does WAV files. Picture really does depend on what kind of format the program you're going to will support. So if I'm going to go to Resolve, I'm going to probably choose QuickTime HQ or QuickTime HQX. HQ is fine, it's 8-bit. If you're doing 8-bit media, it'll look exactly the same as the original, but it has some limitations, like its top resolution is HD, 1920 by 1080, whereas HQ is a bit more flexible and it will go up to higher resolutions, and it's also 10-bit. So I tend to use HQX most of the time, and I tend to go for the fine one. I've also chosen QuickTime HQX. Out of my options here, I've got Grass Valley HQ files. These are AVI files. Resolve won't load those, so there's no point in doing that. I've got to do it as a QuickTime file. Resolve will load that. Obviously I can choose to burn the time code in or not. I'm not going to, because I want to be able to use these like they're original clips. But now I've set it up, so I'm going to copy the clips, I'm going to make it into HQ, I'm going to trim it with some handles on it. Let's go OK, save, and then wait for it to go through and remake the timeline. And what it's doing is it's going to wherever I told it to go, which in this case is this 6 folder here. There's the AAF, which is the list of all the cuts and so on. And in here is all the clips that it's making up. So it's making up all those little MOV files and everything else. That's finished. Let's go into Resolve, start up a new project. I'm going to go File, Import AAF, click on the AAF file and click Open. It comes up with all these different things. Now most of the time I just go OK. What this is doing is it's giving you the option to name the timeline, start timecode and so on. Things like ignoring extensions. It should just work straight off. So let's see what happens. I'm going to click on OK, and it's worked. One of the clips didn't. I don't know why. I don't know which clip it was. I'm just going to say no, I'm not going to look for it. I'm just going to say no, open it up and see what happened. And here you can see the results of my AAF import. Let's make these tracks a little bit smaller here. And you see, yeah, I've managed to actually get most of that edit in. What hasn't happened is like my title, my quick title has come in, but it's lost its transparency. My picture-in-picture effect that I had up here, if I come back into Edius, you'll see the original edit that I had. It had a title, it had a picture-in-picture that fades up and down, it had another picture-in-picture in a jaunty 3D angle, and it's lost those. Like I say, AAF is a nice way of getting an edit from one thing to another, but it doesn't do everything. So it doesn't do effects, it doesn't do picture-in-picture effects, it doesn't do titles very, very well, but at least it's got it in. And the clip it fluffed up was this one at the front. I don't know why, but it does that sometime. Unfortunately, that's the problem we get when we're moving from one to the other. Sometimes stuff doesn't work 100%. So I'm going to need to fix that. Now the easiest thing to do to fix that is I'm going to go to the Media tab, go to that folder where it made all that stuff up, because I'm sure Edius made it. And yep, there it is. That's the wide shot. I'm going to drag that in into the media pool in Resolve. Go to Edit, select this shot. Select that shot in the media pool, right click on the one on the timeline and say Force Conform. In other words, link to that one. You should have done it, do it. And it sorted it out. I don't know why I didn't do it in the first place, but now it's sorted it out. It may happen on more than one clip with you. A lot of the time for me it just works, sometimes it just fluffs it up.